We are live. Hi, everyone. I can see people have started to join in, so I'm going to get started. I am Shweta Madapani. I am a community builder on Be Waste Wise. Be Waste Wise organizes webinars on a wide range of topics around waste and sustainability. The topic for today's webinar is Upskilling Globally to Deliver Our Circular Economy and Net Zero Ambitions. We have Adam Reed from Suez UK. He's the Chief Sustainability and External Affairs Officer of Suez UK. He is moderating today's webinar. This is his topic. Adam has put together a panel. We have Amy Bloom, who's also from Suez Recycling and Recovery. She's a technical plant engineer of process development. David Greenfield, founder and MD, Social, Environmental and Economic Solutions Limited. And Lou Tamaihu-Clovier, who's a co-founder and development manager of Circular Talent. As usual, we will take your questions. Please use the Q&A section. We have some interesting polls. You have any other comments, please use chat. And towards the end of the webinar, we'll link you to everybody's LinkedIn. So if you want to get in touch, if you want to continue the conversation, you can go ahead with it there. Over to you, Adam.
Sweater. Thank you. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Enjoy the festive season, etc., etc. Great to be here. This is a topic that is not only close to my heart, having co-authored a report several years ago on the green skills needed to deliver a circular economy for the Chartered Institution of Waste Management here in the UK. But it's something that I think is now focusing the minds of business leaders and municipal leaders across not only the UK but globally, because the transition that we're facing, whether it's the circular economy, resource efficiency, resource scarcity, net zero, decarbonisation. I think we're facing lots of challenges where urbanisation, population growth, they're all stretching us as a sector. And I think, you know, the definition of our sector is quite interesting, and we might come back to that in a moment. But I think what's really interesting is, in order for our sector to really play its role in net zero, circular economy, and the transition to a one planet living, for want of a better phrase, to coin one, I think we have to understand what the transitions look like, but we more importantly have to understand the skills that are going to be critical in A, getting us there, and then B, keeping us there. And I think there's two sets of skills that I'm quite interested in, and I think we'll see what the panelists think about this. I think there's a set of skills that are all about transition and enabling and driving, and then there's a set of skills that are all about the new norm, and then maintaining a new economy and a new business model, and making everything work for the long term, if you like. So we'll come back to that moment. But I think it's really great. We got a panel today that are gonna share some international experiences, so it's not purely UK focused, which is good. And I do wonder whether the transitions that we might face in the global south or the east versus the west may be significantly different, and therefore the skills needed to drive those transitions may be significantly different. So once we've worked out what the transitions are, and then we've worked out what the skills are, we can then work out how to get them. And I think, you know, if we can get round to that panel today, how do we get those skills in the right place at the right time? Who's going to help develop those? What are the partners? And the organizations and the institutions that are going to enable that kind of rapid upskilling, appropriate to certain geographies or certain opportunities or certain material streams, then I think we've had a pretty good 55-minute session. So there you go. I've set the scene. Audience, great that you're here. I want you to do some work for me straight away. So I'm going to ask Sweater to put up a poll question. I just want to get a sense of where we are as an audience. How confident are you that you know what green skill is or green skills are? So it's do you know? Yes, I'm pretty confident, or no, I'm pretty uncomfortable or not confident in understanding. Now the panel can't vote, but the rest of you can. So quickly give us a tick the box on the screen, a yes or a no. And while we do that, I'm probably going to go straight over to, I'm going to talk to David, I think, first. David Greenfield, sir. Dr. David Greenfield, how are you?
I'm very well, Adam. And yourself?
I'm well, mate, and you were one of those co-authors of that report I mentioned.
I was.
So you and I have been kicking around green skills for a long time. Tell me, where are you got the Circular Economy Club Institute banner up in the back, but you're heavily involved, you know, incoming president of the CIWM. What's vexing you on this green skill space right now?
I think you're very true. We've been talking about this for a while. Green skills is a very broad topic. And I think that because of that, sometimes some of the detail can be very much lost. If we're looking at green skills across the resource management spectrum, which is fundamentally what we're talking about here, there are so many green skills that we need to explore. It's not just, can we take recycling and do it better? It's, how can we facilitate material movement? How can we track materials? How can we start looking at logistics in a better way? The whole life cycle of how materials and resources are moved needs to be considered as part of a transition to a circular economy. Some of those skills are going to be about behavior change. Some of them are going to be about communications. We're not just seeing whether or not we can take people that collect waste on a daily basis and turn them into people that recycle. It's a whole industry change. Let's throw stuff away to let's extend the life. Let's understand the value of the materials. So for me, I'm vexed perpetually on a daily basis about how we can actually move from what is a waste world for a lot of people to a resource management culture.
I'm glad that you've explained why you've got that look in your face every time I see you. It's vexed is the word, and I'm getting a t-shirt with that inscribed on the front and
hopefully
possibly
it'll
the
be
back.
refurbished.
Of course, reused, absolutely.
Indeed.
Thank you for that, David. Sweater, what was the poll result? What do the audience think? Oh, hello. An interesting mix. 54% yes, they know what green skills are, and 46% no, we don't know what green skills are. I mean, Amy, welcome. Now, you and I have been kicking around green skills for almost as long as David and I, partly because there is a mentoring relationship that we've had historically, but also just because when I launched that report, you were there on the day giving your perspective as a young, dynamic graduate worried about the future and what skills you needed to be effective in the in this new world transition that's happening around us. So welcome to the panel, and just give me some reflections from your point of view as a dynamic youngster looking for a long-term impactful career in resource management. Where is this heading?
Thank you for welcoming me, and I love being called a dynamic youngster. I think I'll put that on my CV. Hi everyone. So as Sweater said, I work for Suez in the UK, but I have another hat. I'm part of the CIWM Chartered Institute of Waste Management Young Professional Early Careers Network, and I'm an ambassador. And Adam mentioned that we'd had a mentoring relationship beforehand, and I can't tell you how excited I am for what's coming in our sector. I can see you're laughing, but I'm not vexed. I'm excited by the potential of what's coming. So according to the UN's CC 2023 report, by 2030, 57% of the global population is going to be under 30 or under. Firstly, what a huge resource potential we have to tap into those, and we could train up with the right skills to help us transition and adjust to a new normal. But also there's so much legislation change, there's so much evolution. I mean, it's not strictly in resource management, but you've got the explosion of apologies for the pun, of green hydrogen in Germany, and the sort of the demand, the skills that's going to take, all the way over to Brazil, where they were the second, just behind China, putting the most solar power on the grid last year. So green skills are in demand and they're happening now. And I'm excited for who's going to join the conversation and where we're going to be working and the jobs that are going to be created in the future.
Fantastic. And you are young and dynamic, so there's no we can't hide behind the facts, and I think that's why you are a CIWM ambassador, because we need people like you who are willing to stand up on stage and talk about what you see the future as being, and demanding from us, people like David and I in particular, who've been around the block probably a little bit too long now. What can we do to help enable that transition and to ensure that the right skills are in the right place and that you've got opportunities? So it's great that you could join us, and you flagged some really interesting points there about the globalization of this issue, which is fantastic. Now, Lou, you're not last by any means, but you are my third panelist. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell me why green skills is important to you?
Yes, good. Hi, Adam. Hi, everyone. And yeah, thanks for the invitation. I am the last one also in this panel to like join the group. So yeah, it's really great to be here. So I've been working with research centers in circular economy for a while in North America, in Montreal, and most recently with circle economy in Amsterdam, and mostly working on government strategy. So, to help government access data so that they can figure out their circular economy strategies and policies. And basically what also came with this work was a reflection that, we're really focusing on, which is a great news, that we're focusing on the material and resource efficiency aspect of circular economy at a global level. It's really trickling down to nations worldwide, but then, what happens afterwards? Who is going to put in place this strategy? Who is going to be accountable? Was a part that was a bit, still in process of discovery, but really like lacking in terms of effective strategy. So yeah, I've recently started Circular Talent, which is a recruitment agency specializing in a circular economy position. So yeah, that's the take that I have on that. But maybe also for my take on what are green skills and what are green jobs. With the work that I have been doing at Circle Economy, they were identifying 3 different types of circular jobs. First, there was everything that was core, so core jobs, so everything that really will be dealing directly with the material, so everything in recycling, repair. Then there are all the enabling jobs, so second tier logistic and education. And then there's all the indirect jobs. So even if your job is not directly involved in material use, how can you still integrate leverage circular economy in your day-to-day activities?
Fabulous. I like that. That's one categorization that the audience can take away. I think that's a really great way to think about going green, if you like. I'm going to share a little bit from the Suez experience. We don't talk about green skills anymore because I think there's a little bit of a worry that green suddenly makes you a bit of a campaigner, or you're a bit too ecological and not practical. So we talk a lot about critical skills, and therefore if they're critical, they're on the path. They're either going to drive transition or they're going to deliver the new norm. And from a practical, pragmatic, operational business, that seems a more capturing, more appropriate way of talking about the skills we need, because it means we can identify, and a recruitment consultant, this is the perfect man to answer the questions here today. But if we need people that are material specialists or work on business models, great, but I might need accountants and people that are into communications, and actually a lot of those people wouldn't look for a green job. And certainly the work we've been doing in the UK, and then David's been part of some of this. When you talk to people about green careers, they don't think about being a green accountant or a green, even a green engineer, I don't think. But the reality is all of these roles, if you're involved in any form of business opportunity that is becoming less carbon intensive or more resource resilient, then as far as even the UK government would probably argue, that's a green job. It's absolutely those core skills that are going to enable our sectors to transition. So when I've been in doing schools visits recently, I've started testing the green, and everybody goes Greta, and then they all go, but we don't want to be Greta. And then you go, well, I've got these engineers, people like Amy, and that sounds quite cool. What's she doing? And then so engineering's cool and it's green. I don't worry about whether it's green. The green's not the key thing here. It's, are you contributing to a sustainable world? They don't. The terminology, I think, has to change from geography to geography and target audience to target audience. So I don't know, David. I mean, from your experience, Circular Economy Club, footprint all over the world. I mean, are green skills different in different locations? And is the phrase consistently being adopted, or is it very different from one place to another?
Far from it for me to comment on the whole of the world's view on that question. I do think, though, that the point about using the word green is quite limiting in certain spaces, because actually, if we're looking across different geographies, we've got very different timelines of change. Now, most of us are sitting in Europe. Europe is very well attuned to circular economy. It understands a lot of what's going on. It's already looking at material management in quite an industrial way. We have other parts of the world where even having basic waste collection systems is still a challenge. But some of those countries are embracing renewable energy significantly better than some of us over here. So you've got green engineering skills, which are being utilized on a day-to-day basis over something like waste management. So there's a huge amount of overlap. But for each individual region, area, country, wherever it might be, there's going to be a slightly different approach to what is needed. I think one of the challenges around the word green skills is that you're actually setting it out as something new and something that has to be separate. Whereas actually what we want this to be integrated into the norm. And so it should just be skills for the future economy. And the future economy is about us moving to a much more resource resilient, much more resource understood world. So I know of green chemists, and they like being called a green chemist because it fits within their niche. But I'll go and speak to construction people, and I'll talk to them about circular economy, and they'll go, yeah, what? And we go, building information modeling. And, oh, okay, yeah, we get that. So different language is very different, appropriate for different sectors, as well as different regions.
Interesting. So, Lou, you've got, again, footprint in a number of geographical locations. You're busy as a, circular economy advisor, recruiter, let's say. Is the language very different from place to place, or is this if I said green skills, most places you operate, would people feel comfortable with my conversation?
Well, I would say, well, first the words change from one place to another, that's for sure. But I think when we talk about green skills, and especially circular skills and circular jobs in general, the main finding that we see at a global level is that most of the studies are coming from the global north. And so it's very difficult to qualify what are circular skills and circular jobs worldwide, because so little research is actually available from the global south. And if we look at a global circular economy, the global south is the part of the world where most of the circular strategies are actually being implemented. If we look at recycling, repair, and so on. So there's actually that huge part of, well, informal workers in general that are not being accounted for and therefore are not part of this conversation and this reflection. So I think that's the biggest gap in qualifying and defining what's green and circular skills are right now. Yeah.
I mean, it's a really good point, and a number of these waste aid webinars over the years, whether I've been on them or not, have focused on the kind of this north-south and east-west kind of debate that happens. I think you're right. Circularity is inbuilt into much of the locations that you're talking about. Certainly my work historically in North Africa and Latin America, is, it's just the norm, isn't it? It's, that the value of the resource drives a business model that we in the West don't really understand, because we become quite wasteful and throw away, and I think we could learn a lot. And certainly the last webinar, or the one before that, Sweater, we did a whole session about what the North could learn from the South, and I definitely think this is a space where we can't expect everybody to go on the same green skills transition that we're doing, decarbonisation, resource efficiency, when actually there's an exemplary set of transitions that are happening that we could borrow and utilise. So that's a fascinating take. Audience, remember, if you've got questions for this unbelievably transparent, open, and persuasive panel, then drop them in. But in the meantime, I've got loads of questions. So we're okay. I mean, Amy, you spend time in schools. You've been into my son's primary school a couple of years ago. Where do you think the next gen, not your gen, I'm already looking after your gen. You give me a hard time, and I have to make sure that the world's going to be a good place for you. But how do we make sure that my son's generation are going to see the opportunities and are going to be ready for the skills transition? Because at the moment, I do worry that they still will want to be doctors, dentists, and vets, and you know, or be tennis coaches and social media influencers. I'm sure that's not a real job, by the way. So
No, I hope not. Yeah.
how do we get them to join this hugely transitional space that we call resources and not waste management?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question, and the answer is always evolving. I think one large part of that is communication awareness, and in the UK especially, schools have careers advice. Now, how are we giving that careers advice? Are people or students coming through, are they aware of the opportunities that are different from the norm, or what has been the norm in the past? For example, if you do 3 sciences and maths, you're going to go and maybe study medicine or veterinary science. I would say from a resource management perspective, I would say 95% of the people I work with fell into this sector by accident. A lot of the guys I work with in my most direct team have come from the power industry. They've come from, you know, oil and gas, working on platforms, and they've transitioned into, they wanted a job closer to home, and they found the resource management sector. So I think technically they come under the umbrella of green skills now, because we're using their skills to build the processes, to build the plants that are going to allow us to transition into a more circular future. But I would bet money on them not calling themselves or saying that they had green skills.
Yeah.
In fact, that's what they have. So I think communication, appearing in the right places, and I think it's really critical to remember we're all here because we have an awareness. So we know there's a demand for it. We know that the demand's going to increase, and we all kind of speak the same language, right? We've been in resource management for a little while. But we're trying to engage with people, whether they are early careers, whether they are returning, whether they want to retrain, in people that don't speak our language, that don't have our same networks. So how it's really critical if we're going to, you know, target your son and his cohort. Are we speaking their language? Are we appearing in the places that they're looking for information, or are we helping the people who they're going to for information, for careers advice, to say this is a viable and this is an exciting developing industry globally to get involved in?
I think you make some great points there, Amy. I think the point you made about, you know, many of your colleagues coming into our sector through more traditional power sector type activities. I think they'd never call themselves green, and we would undervalue them if we tried to call them green. But actually, they've got exactly that critical skill set that enables us to be a business that goes green and delivers transition. So yeah, I think the green moniker is perhaps unnecessary at times. David's alluded to the fact, isn't it? Skills needed in the economy, and if branding them green was to limit our attractiveness, then that's an interesting conversation for geographies across the world, isn't it? I'm going to ask David this question because this is a toughie. Yeah, I mean, this is like mastermind now. Environmentally friendly or sound, is it the same as eco-friendly? Discuss. Wow, that's a great question.
How do I avoid answering that question?
I could just mute you.
Yeah, you could. I think it highlights actually one of the problems we've got, because I could then throw into that sustainability. I could throw into that carbon. I can throw into that net zero. We have so many definitions around various parts of what we're trying to achieve that sometimes we forget about what we're trying to achieve. And actually, possibly we should be looking more at how we can actually deliver solutions under a much broader umbrella. So if we're trying to reduce the amount of carbon generated from a single process, then that's an output. So you can call it whatever you like, really. We're trying to actually get some solutions, and the solutions that we're trying to do are about protecting the future generations, protecting the resources that are currently already out there. I use the term quite a lot. I'm an urban miner. So I'll go around the urban environment
with your yellow hard hat on.
Exactly.
Big
I
lamp
can go,
on the front.
right, I'm looking at some bottles that are on the shelf over there going, okay, what's the next life for those? How do we reuse them? How do we, if we can't reuse them, how do we then remanufacture them, et cetera, et cetera? So there's a mindset there, and that moniker of what we call it has to be linked to the outputs, because otherwise we just lose the context of it. And I'll give you a left field example. You wouldn't expect anything less, Adam.
That's why you got the invite, David.
A very good friend of mine was the sustainability priest for the Church of England. I worked with him for 5 years, and we were trying to change the behavior and the attitude to energy, to water shortages, to waste through a religious framework. And we used exactly the same skills in the church as I used in county councils. We had a champion, who was the bishop, and we got the bishop to go out to his colleagues and say, this is my view, get on board. We need those champions, and it depends on the sectors that we're talking about, that the champions need to be able to give an overview and say, right, this is where we're going. These are the skills that we need moving forward, and this is what we're trying to achieve.
Interesting example, and I wasn't expecting it.
Left field.
Well, thank you. Right, there's some good points coming in the chat and some questions. It's a question around awareness. So a skill set is being open to the opportunity for embedding circularity, net zero, sustainability principles in your day-to-day job. And somebody else has written in and said, these principles need to be embedded in everything that happens in society, whether it's a retail environment or a manufacturing base. And I guess, you know, Lou, from your perspective, are you seeing a lot of interest in sectors suddenly appointing people that have got sustainability or circularity or process engineering skills that will help drive resource efficiency or net zero?
Yeah, for sure. And you know, in the end, it also like you get to ask yourself the question like, can you even have a green job or a circular job if you're working in a linear company or on a linear project, you know? Because so in the end, like it's really about the whole system in which we are working that needs to be green or circular, because otherwise you're just being, you know, you can repair a linear production line. Then, you know, that's where like there can be a lot of contradiction in that. But yeah, definitely like what we are seeing is that more and more companies are getting the message of, you know, circular economy and green skills exactly from a resource efficiency perspective, you know, good or bad. That's the reason why a lot of companies are now turning to circular economy strategy and are interested in hiring more people with these core skills so that they can be more efficient on that sense. And also, you know, the new legislations with CSRD also coming in are great drivers for hiring this kind of workforce. Yeah.
I mean, you've raised a great point there, Lou, about CSRD, because I think that kind of reporting framework, as a CSO, Chief Sustainability Officer, I have to turn one of them out a year, and I have to work with group to do a global one, and wow, the data. Data mining, you know, bring David back in. The data mining we have to do, the setting of the KPIs, the tracking of performance, the retraining that's having to go on across the business in order that they can respond to those KPIs. It's an enormous piece of work. I'm sure there's some consultants out there, they're absolutely loving this new reporting world because they're getting hired a lot. So the question I've got then, Lou, is have we got enough experience, expertise and skills out there to do all of this additional reporting, setting of the right frameworks, delivery, or are we all kind of learning as we go? Because it feels a little bit like, you know, you've had a little bit of experience and then suddenly you're driving fundamental change in a big corporate. That sounds quite risky from a brand perspective.
Yeah, I think like there's really a big risk of having a deep skills gap on reporting first with CSRD, but also like all circular strategies. And on that, then it's really like, you know, the responsibilities of both companies and universities to, you know, look at what's coming and making sure that the workforce has access to these skills that are that will be critical, you know, in the coming years. And in a way, that's a bit like, what is missing now in a lot of strategies where, we got the resource part kind of figured out, or at least there's a vision and there's a plan there. Now it's missing the other piece, like who will be working there. And we can't also look at it from a linear perspective that we will hire new people to work on that. We also need to work with the team that we currently have and upskilling internally.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think all this talk of new kind of gets exciting, doesn't it? It's like new and green, when the reality is, in the UK alone, we got 6,500 staff at Suez. We can't ignore them whilst we're looking at the shiny thing over there. Oh, look, circular economy. Let's go recruit and attract. So when you've got to make sure that we transition effectively with that staff base that we've got, and utilizing their skills, and maybe changing or helping change their perspectives so that they can apply those skills in a slightly different location. I always think back to when we started to build some of our recycling facilities. We realized that the skills gap that we had was that we weren't process experts, and people in food and drink and manufacturing are. So you bring some of them in, and it opens up your eyes to the things that you didn't know. And I guess Amy's experience, of running energy from waste plants, is people from the power sector know how to run those kinds of kit, because that's what they do. What we're good at is understanding that the feedstock changes on a daily basis, which it didn't in the traditional power sector. And I think that's how do we take skills and repurpose them is going to be a really important transition activity. Right. Some of the questions coming in. We've heard about champions. That's great. And we've heard about data. So there's a load of skills in those two. And we've heard a bit about materials people. So designers and material scientists, maybe. Amy, give me 5 jobs that you think, or 5 types of role that you think are going to explode, maybe globally, in this transition to net zero circularity. What are the kinds of jobs that, if you were advising, school children, whether it be here or in Lahore or Adelaide, I've just picked some random locations, what would you be saying? These are the kinds of jobs and skills that you really want to be thinking about locking in.
Just 5.
Well, only 5, because I want to leave something for the other 2.
Okay, well, I would say that we need to be, in my opinion, be careful that we're not just retraining and then we'll be ready. I think there needs to be this constant retraining. We're going to be transitioning. So it was on LinkedIn, they were saying there's 100 million different types, 100 million jobs to come over the next few years, thanks to the transition to the new greener economy. So we will always be retraining. There will never be a moment where we stop learning. And if we do, I think then we're in trouble. From my perspective, I would definitely say engineers. There's so many new processes coming out, new ways to make more value, or take value from something that was traditionally single use. I think there's a huge point as well on social media and campaigning, because we can do the best job in the world, but if the general population who have a life and have jobs and they have to feed their families are seeing a news report on waste going abroad, they're not thinking about there's an opportunity there for a circular green skills. In my opinion, that it's not a competition between green skills and other skills. There's you talk about the data mining, you talk about all these sort of KPIs and setting, leading these businesses. We need to work together with maybe industries that we haven't traditionally worked with, to create a workforce that's resilient for the future, and realize that maybe we can't compete financially, maybe we won't be able to get the same perks, but we can create a role that helps people feel like and know that they're doing something that's going to help their children, their grandchildren. So that was 2 jobs, 2 or 3 jobs. So I've left
3, but it was big. It was big and broad, though. We'll start with those. Come on in, David. What are you going to add to this list of key jobs and skills that we think are globally are going to explode?
I think there's one element which is really important to define what the other skills are. And we have to have the strategists. There is a strategy skill here. telling the story of exactly where we're trying to get to, whether that's politicians, whether that's champions, but it's also how do you actually understand, if we're talking day-to-day circularity of a system, how do we understand the system? How do we understand the supply chain? How do we understand the interlink, picking up on what Amy's just said, between different skill sectors? When I go into University of Brighton as visiting professor of circular economy, I talk to multiple engineering teams about how they speak to each other and go, I haven't spoken to the mechanical engineers as a civil engineer, but what you're building, you're part of the life cycle. So there's a connectivity element there.
Yeah.
I think one other area that we haven't talked about yet, which is going to explode, is AI. AI is currently massive. Through Exor, one of my other projects, we've just launched an AI supply chain resilience tool to try and understand what materials are going to be available for the future. I'm seeing so many AI or machine learning applications of the world that we're living in. And Adam, you remember some of the stuff we did with Pothole Spotter 7 years ago,
Indeed.
taking machine learning from a bin lorry camera and looking at how we can actually prevent potholes being created by monitoring the road surface. For me, these skills are understanding lots of different sectors and looking at how we can actually bring them together and how we can facilitate solutions. And that is where the strategy comes in. You need to have that creative thinking.
Very good. And go on in, Lou. What are you going to add to this? This list is good, by the way. I hope somebody's making some notes, because this is like like every university's dream, college, school, the things you should be teaching in the next 10 years. So go on, Lou. What are we adding to this list?
Yeah, maybe not sure if it's going to be booming, but it's definitely missing right now is everything around well, the legal aspect of the transition. What are because well, the circular economy transition comes with like new business models, and everything with the sharing economy also creates a lot of atypical workers. If we look at the delivery services, and this create a lot of gray zones in terms of legal aspect. Are they employees? Are they freelancing? So there's like all these new types of relationship between individual and companies that right now are not really covered, and will for sure create more and more situations and more questions. And yeah, and with that, everything related to health and safety too, going from linear processes like with the industries based on extraction to now dealing with more and more waste. It's also going to cause new situations that will for sure need to be taken care of.
Thank you. So we got a real picture there of some of the areas that we think are going to expand and explode. I'm going to put repair in there. Just generally, anybody that can fix my iPhone or my tablet or and the list goes on, doesn't it? Because actually in the UK, certainly it's far from easy, and certainly not simple. I think so. It's not on my doorstep. It's not immediate. So therefore, it causes problems. I think there's a growth in that, and I think based on the conversations that I'm seeing in the tracking the channels today, influencers, but I don't mean the social media influencers. I don't mean TikTokers. For those of you that know what I'm talking about, clearly I don't. But people that are in policy, people that are influencing brands to change what they do. Actually, I'd love to think I'm an influencer. I even say that when I introduce myself to people. But reality, am I changing what brands do? Nowhere near as much as I'd like to. And certainly, I can nudge government around a bit, but they still do their own thing. So I think there's a space here for people that the visionaries, the strategists, we can create new business models that we hadn't thought of. The idea that renting stuff when we've historically always owned it, oh, shock horror. But actually, if you're going to rent stuff, the business model around it is completely different from selling it, and that creates different jobs and different relationships and different skill sets and etc. So I think it's a really exciting time wherever you are in the world. So that's great. Right, I'm going to put let's ask the second poll question, because I'm interested to get a bit of an audience stock take before we continue with some of these great questions that are coming in. So audience, how confident are you that people generally outside are going to have the right skills for the future? So you could be voting about you as an individual, or maybe it's just, yeah, I'm confident that the transition will happen and we will have the right people in the right place when they're needed. I think it's a really fascinating question, and it's certainly one that we've been talking to UK government about at length, because it's all well and good identifying what the transition might look like, but if you don't put the right pieces of the equation together, you don't get the right people in the right place at the right time, in which case the strategy was wrong and undeliverable, in which case we've all wasted time hoping rather than delivering. So while the audience are voting, I mean, David, a question around this for you. You know, how do we ensure the right skills get to the people that need them at the right time? What's the ask of a government, whether it be the European Union, UK government, Botswanan government, the list goes on, versus private sector, who in many of these geographies own the large workforces. So that's my question for you: is where's the responsibility lie, and how do we make that happen so that we do get the right courses and the right content and the right experiences to the people that need them?
The traditional answer is that government sets the policy and industry follows that policy with a view that it will try to do the bare minimum to deliver that policy. I think that what we're starting to see is a significantly more collaborative approach to delivery, and that we're seeing a lot more engagement from government with industry, with decision makers, with the private sector, to actually test whether some of the outputs that we want, if we're working towards net zero by 2050, as an example, that is an industry change, that is a governmental change, that is a world change. So politicians can't do this on their own. They have to be much more collaborative. They have to be much more engaging, and they have to test whether things are possible. But what we're also seeing is that quite a lot of the large multinationals are being led by sometimes best practice by one particular region, and then changing their whole system to that level. So that means that we've got governments playing catch up with some of the industries, because they're going, well, I've got to do this in the EU. It's cheaper for me to do it everywhere in Europe than it is to have a UK version and a Europe version. So I think governments have to start to recognize that their ability to put policy in is not just about policy for their own particular geography. It's much broader than that.
Good point. Thank you. And I mean, Lou, I mean, how confident are you that the right courses, whether they be applied, internally delivered by the private sector, or academically, created by institutes and universities, how confident are you that that new material that's going to make more people aware, more people proficient in circularity, sustainability, life cycle thinking, other such requirements, or green design, green chemistry, green physics, green engineering, are you confident that program of work is underway, and that we are going to see the right courses at the right levels in the right places to help that transition, or are we lagging behind?
I think it really depends of the type of jobs. I think anything related to like strategy is being worked on at university level and so on. But the transition, especially from extraction to repair, recycling, is going to change a lot of the skills that are needed, and the day-to-day is going to vary a lot from like what we currently have. So practice at the job is going to be much more important than theory. You won't be able to rely so much on this is the process, this is what comes in, this is what comes out. So practice and diversity of experience is going to become much more relevant. So companies will need to have practical training on site much more compared to what is possible now in a linear system. So I think it's really for companies to be able to identify who have the current skills, who hold the knowledge of diversity of situation that they can be exposed to, and help them train others as they join the companies.
Thank you. Shweta, do we get a result for that last poll? What's the 39% versus 61%. I'm going to bring Amy in there then. So there isn't a huge amount of confidence. And I've got to be honest, I'm reading the chat and there's a lot of like, where do I get the training? Or I don't like the tone, or this isn't right. I think I can feel a bit of tension here, which is good, because that's why people come to these webinars, is they want answers and they want to know where to go next. And I guess therefore, as somebody that's, still at the front end of your career, not the back end of your career, how confident are you that this is going to work? And do you think the courses are being developed? It's a similar question to the one I just put to Lou, but reflecting on that poll question, there's not a huge amount of positivity in this room right now. So, I mean, are you a shining light, or are you being dampened by the spirits of the room?
I can't see the chat on my laptop, so unfortunately I can't see the tone of the chat at the moment. My perspective, we can talk about the green skills transition, we can talk about a lot of things, but if there's not buy-in from the company or willingness to put their staff through training, if it doesn't make financial sense to them. I was working with a not-for-profit and they said, yes, we're not-for-profit, but we're also not for loss. And I think that's a really powerful statement. Like, businesses, however they are formed, however their size, they want to survive and they want to grow. So they say, are the businesses supporting, and are there the right champions in that business, whatever size it is, who are going to encourage, support the transition of the company? My perspective is from a UK base, because that's where I am. But we are all facing, the climate is changing globally. We are in a climate crisis that is irrelevant of boundaries. It's irrelevant of, short-term political gain. It's, policies or whatever. Realistically, I always think you have to try and stay positive, because once you give up, that's it.
Very good advice.
You've lost the fight. So you need to try and stay positive. But it can be demoralizing when you do see, I'm coming back to that influencer, coming back to that news piece about what the general public are receiving, when they don't feel that there is, I hope it's such a huge conversation. It's part of it's something that's even bigger than all of us. How do we maintain some sort of optimism when we already see the climate changing and we're adapting to it now? Because fundamentally, when we talk about net zero, we talk about circular economy, that's what we're aiming for, isn't it? We're aiming for a world that we can all live in a way that we want to live in it, and we're not harming future generations coming in to use the world.
Very sage advice. Thank you. Got 8 or 9 minutes left, so we're going to stop wrapping up. David, go on. You got a comment on that?
I was just going to say, I'd agree entirely with Amy. I think also we've got to look. We keep partitioning this into, there's new skills, there's skills that people have got to learn, and we're talking about people, and more often the chat is talking about individuals. I've taken a whole council through circular economy change. We took 150 people through 10 workshops exploring what circularity meant to them from a systems perspective, and then understanding what circular economy meant to the organization. That is in many cases, much better way of getting system change within an organization, because you're actually bringing a diversity of people with different skill sets on the same journey. So whether you're an individual that's an expert, or whether you're a consultant that's trying to do this, or whether you're an organization, we have to look at the type of skills that are already in place. We forget about the skills that are already in place. So, and how we can then amplify and amend them in certain cases. So it's not always you need to learn new skills. It's how can you take your existing skill base and apply it in a different way?
Very good. Wouldn't disagree with you at all. So, right, first and foremost, audience, there's some great chat going on. So if you're not part of the chat, you got to join the chat quickly, because there's links to all sorts of training materials. Much of it very well priced, I'm certain, but all of it available to a global audience, which I think is really important. So please check it out. I think it's really important that this group is, it's a bit like a self-help group, isn't it? I think, the connectivity, I've been watching some of the other chat. David's busy chatting to people he hasn't spoke to in 5 years, which I think is brilliant. So it's kind of like, the connectivity of our space is the beauty, I think, of this opportunity. So please use the network to continue some of these conversations beyond just the webinar. We're all available for that conversation. I want to give a shout out. Juliet Evans has raised a really interesting point here about just LinkedIn full of sustainability manager posts and jobs, and the fact that they're usually really lowly paid and therefore can't achieve a great deal. And I think it was fascinating. I went to a meeting. I'm going to share an insight just quickly, and then we'll wrap up. I went to a meeting of 150 chief sustainability officers. Chief means they should be C-suite, i.e. board level. 150 of them in central London for a breakfast, where we had a couple of UN ambassadors and a couple of other big hitting CSOs from massive brands talking. And there was a poll in the room, and the question was, how many of you are a C-suite director, i.e. you sit on the board in your country? 2 out of 150 CSOs. So they've all got the title Chief Sustainability Officer. I was one of 2 that actually sit on the board and make decisions about the future of the company. There's our problem. So coming back to Juliet's point, absolutely agree. If you're too low level in an organization, you're facing all the other issues of profit, growth, linear models that work or don't work. Until sustainability is given a certain seat and prominence in a business, it's going to be difficult to change that business, unless it's the chief exec themselves that's driving change, in which case you can report to them and they'll do your championing, which is David's point, having somebody that's willing to push the boundaries. So I thought that was quite interesting, and I'm glad to see some of the conversations that are happening around sort of these posts. So anyway, let's start wrapping up. I want to ask the poll question again, Sweater. I just wonder whether there's been any change in the level of appreciation and understanding about green skills. Are we more certain now that we know what green skills are, or have we just muddied the waters because some of us are talking about it being everything in the kitchen sink? So give us a vote on that one, which I think is quite interesting. And then we'll ask each of the panelists to sort of wrap up. So Lou, what's your key 2 or 3 takeaway messages for the audience today? What would you like them to do next, or what should I get printed on my heavily repaired T-shirt?
Yeah, well, maybe to repeat a bit like what David was mentioning, that it's not about everything new, if we're talking about implementing a circular economy transition, then we also need to apply that same logic to the teams and how companies are. What do we currently have? Do we really need to hire new people, and do we really need to let go of people that we've been working with? So I think same as the reflection that we've been able to do now on material and resource use, we should also apply the same circular economy logic to how we build our teams and how we are going to make them evolve in the future. And yeah, I really think that the biggest challenge is going to be about upskilling the existing workforce and finding new ways to get access to this knowledge faster than we've been able to currently.
Excellent, thank you. Amy, what's your 2 or 3 key takeaway messages?
I'd say resilience is key, although we may see some hurdles. If we're going to make change, can be hard. We need a bit of resilience. And I would also say, let's just keep talking about it. Let's keep pushing for it. Because the moment we stop talking and pushing and try to champion it ourselves, then we've lost.
Very good. Sweater, what was the scores on the doors before we bring David back in? Oh, that's gone up, hasn't it? That's a 73%. I think that's a winner chicken dinner. Well, to coin a phrase. I'm having that as a result. Well, in which case, audience, thank you for having learnt in the last 48 minutes, and panel, thank you for helping educate or clarify in the last 48 minutes. Your work here is almost done. David, what's your reflections on the session today, and what would you ask the audience to do next?
I'm going to finish with an upbeat. Audience, brilliant. The fact that you've actually changed your view means that you've already got the skills to listen. And that's one of the things that we need. But I think probably just reflecting on the whole session today, everybody has got a skill. Whether it's green or not, it doesn't matter. Everybody's got a skill, and we need to then look at how we can actually apply that to the outcome that we're looking for, which is changing the economy, changing to a net zero world, changing to a climate resilient world, changing to a material resource efficient world. So how can individuals work together to use their own skills to actually achieve that aim? And we've got the right people here. Some of the chat in here is brilliant. I'm very jealous of the people that are mailing from sunny Mauritius, amongst other places. Do reach out to offer me a drink. No. So I think ultimately, because you're here, you've already got the right skills. It's how can you actually get your colleagues to enjoy the skills?
I think you're absolutely right, David. I think it's been a fascinating conversation. I love talking green skills or critical skills or circular skills, depending on your particular bent. And if I'm talking to my 12-year-old son, it's just good underpinning skills that will ensure that you're productive and enjoy your career, whatever that may be. I think, audience, you've been great. I mean, some of this chat is just outstanding, and I think some of these links to the Belgian program looks like really interesting. Circular Ambassador program. We've got the Circular Economy Institute on the call today. The idea of having an international internship program sounds like a winner. So David's already offered to go to Mauritius for nothing, which I think is a great offer and an opportunity. But I think there's something we can do in this space. I think whether it's through ISWA, International Solid Waste Association, whether it's through CIWM in the UK, I think whether we get the UN involved, there's got to be opportunities here for learning, and sharing experiences. And I think this is what going one step beyond the mentoring programs that we're all involved in through all of these institutions. So I think there is that embedded cultural opportunity from being somewhere and applying your skills to their issues. I think could be exactly the kind of challenge that would really open up new opportunities. So fantastic. Thank you for that, audience. Sweater, I think we're already done. My takeaway, look, I'm talking to the converted. You are the blessed. You get circular, and you get net zero, and you get green jobs, and as far as I'm concerned, you're all right. It's just everybody else we work with. So I think my ask of you is don't be shy in talking about this with your family at Christmas or other festive activities, or talking to people that you work with about how are we preparing for the transitions that are coming. We talked about migration, we talked about urbanization, we talk about population growth, we talk about climate change, we talk about I don't know, resource security risks. All of these things are happening to geographies across the planet. How do we as businesses or municipal leaders or governments or NGOs plan for that to make sure that we've got people who can face up to those challenges, can create solutions, and can export them to other places and geographies, so that we can all benefit in the long term? Because I think that's the really interesting challenge. So it's been my pleasure to host. I think, is this your last Be Waste Wise webinar? So the last one of 2024. It's been my absolute pleasure to be here. It's my last webinar of 2024 on any platform, so I'm done for the year. I look forward to joining Sweater and the panel and Be Waste Wise in the new year. I'm sure there's got some great events lined up. And audience, if you want to talk at these things, or you've got experiences to share, I'm sure Sweater will be over the moon at that offer. So don't be shy in stepping forward. 2025 is a new year, and the opportunities, I think Amy was alluding to this, are endless. So my pleasure. Thank you very much, and have a good Christmas festive break.
Thank you, Adam. And just an update to the audience, I noted down all the links that's been shared, so I'm going to put that up on the website when this webinar is going live, when the recording is going to go up on the website. So yes, happy holidays, everyone. This is the last webinar for this year. We will see you in 2025. Thanks a lot to the panelists. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Everyone. Bye.